Given this changing landscape of the workforce right now, like meaning how there's a lot of, whether it's layoffs or restructure or change that is happening, as an individual, you need to know what your unique value prop is. You need to know what you bring to the table, and you need to be able to advocate for yourself and develop great relationships, because then when people know this is what you're great at, they're going to start referring you for opportunities as well.
Welcome back to Secrets of a Corporate Game. So many people are trying to navigate a corporate world that is laden with secrets, cleverly hidden and unspoken rules to a game that most employees don't even know they're playing. On this podcast, we try to give you a peek behind the curtain and unveil some of those secrets with tips and tricks that you can apply today to start taking control of your career and progress up the ladder faster. Welcome back to Secrets of the Corporate Game podcast. I'm your host, Kendal Berg, that career coach. And today we are exploring the intricacies of professional networking with our expert, Diana YK Chan, who is a good friend of mine, and I'm excited to have her. She is the creator of LinkedIn Learning Nano courses on digital networking. And we're going to dive into some of the effective strategies for networking at events, starting to harness some of the digital platforms that are out there, also fostering those kind of enduring professional relationships. So whether you are new to networking or you're just looking to enhance your skills, this episode is going to offer essential insights into thriving in today's interconnected professional landscape across a lot of different mediums. So welcome, Diana. It is so great to have you on the show.
Hey, Kendall. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
We're going to have so much fun. I already know it. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell them a little bit about your background and what kind of coaching and mentoring you offer.
Absolutely. So I am a career and business coach, where I'm known to be a personal branding, networking, and a career pivot expert. What that means is I specialize in helping people differentiate their unique value and their online personal brand, where they also grow their network, monetize their expertise, and increase their income.
I love it. And you've got such a clear brand yourself, right, that you've developed over so much time that I think when I first met you through a mutual friend, I was like, man, she is nailing it in this niche, right? You've really found that space for yourself as well in your personal brand.
Absolutely. I love personal branding. One of the things I always talk about is that personal branding is like wedding planning. It's all about how do you want people to experience you, remember you, and how you want them to feel at the end of the day. And I really believe when you double down on your personal brand, you attract more opportunities there.
I love that. And if it's a lot like wedding planning, then also you're the only person who knows if anything goes wrong. So that's great. There's the one single person. Well, awesome. Well, you talk a lot about effective networking and you talk about it in a professional context. Why don't you give us like a clear definition of what that is?
Ooh, love networking. So what is networking? So one of the things I always talk about is I like to think about positive networking. Positive networking is all about discovering what you can do for others. That's what positive networking is all about. And I really believe that networking is really the art of building authentic relationships based on mutual value and respect. It's about being naturally curious and genuinely interested in others so that you can discover what you can do for them. So a few things people always ask me, well, how can I add value? Like offer expertise, provide resources, make introductions, be supportive, organize events, bringing people together. Those are some examples of how you can add value.
I love those ideas. And it's so interesting because I recently was reading a book where the author said that we care more about people we do things for than we do the people who do things for us. And so what's so interesting about what you're saying is you're having that opportunity where like you're building that strong bond you're doing for. And one of the things I also encourage my clients is also figure out what they're good at and what they can help you with, right? And build that two-way, like you mentioned, that reciprocated relationship where they're adding value to you, but you're also reciprocating and adding that value back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you think about it, in order to really add that value, you have to really get curious, like really understanding what are their biggest challenges, what's keeping them at night, what are their goals, what do they need help with? Like one of my favorite questions is, how can I help you? How can I best serve you? And when you really ask that question, that's when you see, okay, well, do I know anyone? Do I have resources? Do I know of opportunities? And from there, like that's how they're going to feel like, okay, you really care about them and that they want to also help you as well.
And I think That's so important because a lot of the time when I talk to individuals about networking, it's like, well, I only really network when I need a job. And if you're going into your networking with the mindset of like, I need a job, do you have one? You miss the whole point that you're sharing, which is how can I help you? What do you need? How do I solve your biggest problems? How do you nurture and build a strong relationship so that later you never have to job search? They just tap you and say, hey, I was already thinking about Diana because she's amazing. Let's bring her into the fold. And that curiosity that you mentioned, I think really helps with that reframing of the mind.
Absolutely. So let's just think about this. Like, I see a lot of people when it comes to job searching that they know that networking is important, but they're just getting started. And it's like, well, I need to either ask for help to get a job. And a lot of times that may feel very transactional, meaning I'm reaching out because I'm asking for a favor. So let's just think for a moment here is that when you're approaching that way, the receiving end would feel like they're either being taken advantage or used or feeling it's very transactional based. Mm-hmm. And in order for people to really do the favor for you or to help you, there needs to be that foundation of trust and rapport. Mm-hmm. Right? Building genuine trust and rapport is so, so important because if you don't have that relationship is very surface level.
Yes.
Right. But when you have the trust, when it's actually established, the relationship goes deeper and they're willing to bat for you. So I know that when I make introductions to people, like even I have clients where if I'm introducing them to people in my network, the response rate is really high because I have that reputation that I only make solid introductions. Mm-hmm. That I believe there is a value in that relationship for them to connect. And so when you build that reputation for that, you're more likely to get that higher response rate or receiving the help as well.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that starts upstream, right? So if we think about what you just shared, it requires a pre-existing relationship before the transaction, right? It means you can't wait to start networking when you need something. You need to be networking. It needs to be part of your everyday. And something that you coach on a lot is, how to network and what are some of those strategies, at industry events or conferences so that you can start to build that network out proactively rather than when you need it. So I'd love to hear what are some of those ways for listeners to start building that network now, even if they're not in the job market, even if they're not seeking that next opportunity to start to build and establish that trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one thing I want to talk about actually to add on to this is to really making those deposits into the relationship bank account, right? Meaning that you got to make those deposits first in order to withdraw. The more you do that, it's going to become more rich essentially, right? So start making those relationship deposits, right? Because then you're going to have like that, the ROI down the road. In terms of way to start networking. So I like to think about it different ways of online networking, event networking, and intentional networking. So what I mean by that is like online networking, which is really like digital networking. So using platforms like LinkedIn to connect and engage with people. Like Kendal, I can tell you like the last several years, like since the pandemic here in 2020, I really have built a really strong global network, not just the local network. I've always loved networking. I would go to like networking events, but since 2020, I've really grown my network globally. And because of that, I've been able to land global opportunities, like speaking for the UN, for example. And it's because of all that global online networking. So using a platform like LinkedIn to whether connect with people, reach out to them directly, connect, engage with people's content as an example, or creating your own content to create that brand and visibility, that authority as well to attract opportunities. The second piece is around event networking. So this is where you are attending, let's say, conferences, seminars or workshops or any of these industry type of events. That's a great way to meet people in your industry to gain insights of trends, challenges, opportunities. And from there, you never know that you may uncover a job opportunity because you were there or that you were sharing some of your insights there. So that's another great opportunity to attend events. Now, sometimes people say to me, well, I don't have enough time to do this. I think you got to be really intentional about what are those events that you feel will give you the best return on investment or the time, right? At first, when you're first doing it, you may not know. So you're just experimenting, which is okay. But as you get more like a networking pro here, you really need to evaluate, am I meeting the the people that I want to meet? Do I have the ideal audience there? Am I learning what I want to learn? So we get more intentional as well. The third piece of networking we talk about is intentional networking. So this is like really thinking about, like even right now in your end, that we really think about who are the people we really want to deepen those relationships with, right? And so every quarter, map out a list of 20 to 30 people that you want to make an effort to nurture that relationship, whether it's through coffee chats, lunch dates, dinners, or being part of masterminds to foster that deeper relationship. And when you actually do that, you're really going to see either your career or business skyrocket because you are putting yourself in the right, being in the right room or with the right people, or you're collaborating with each other to help each other rise as well.
It's so impactful what you're sharing. And I want to work like backwards in what you just talked about. I think for your last point in that intentional networking, one of the big feedbacks that I always get is, well, I don't have time. I don't have time to go out and meet people. I'm in meetings all the day. I don't have time to follow up with my VP or to follow up with my stakeholders. And exercises that I know for a fact companies do is at the end of the year when you're doing performance reviews, a lot of the time companies will do almost a heat map of who knows people, right? Raise your hand if you know Diana. Raise your hand if you know Kendal. My company does a physical heat map that's red, yellow, green. How well do you know this person? And being green on that adds so much value to your year-end performance review because it shows you're nurturing relationships. It shows you're an influencer. And that intentionality is important. I have been remote with my teams for more than 5 years now, have never met people that I've worked with, but you better bet I'm green on every list, right? I set that intentional time, those virtual coffee chats. I send DoorDash gift cards. Let's go out to lunch, you and I, and chat because it is so important to nurture. And so I love that you're giving that advice because I feel like it often gets deprioritized when in the end, it can be the most impactful thing for your success.
That's such a good point because I think what I'm hearing, what you're talking about is by doing intentional networking, you are essentially building a reputation of who knows you. Not just who you know, but who knows you and also what you're known for, what you do well, right? That you are showing up. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen with clients where I've helped them land jobs the last few years is how do I build my brand and network virtually? That's the biggest challenge people have. And so you really have to be intentional of not just showing up, let's say, in the meetings, like that's one avenue that you're already showing up in meetings, but building relationships through the one-on-one chats. Whether I like to think about that in terms of the different type of connections, whether it's through text messagings, right? And then voice notes, and then like virtual Zoom meetings like this. And then eventually, ideally if you can meet in person as well, that will really deepen in the relationship. Like, Kendal, let me tell you, like, I've noticed, like, even this past year, like, I've really doubled down on networking, meaning I would make an effort to fly out to another country to meet with people. Like, as an example, last year, I'm in Toronto, in Canada. I flew out to New York to attend the LinkedIn Learn Instructor reunion event where I was the only Canadian instructor. And in that one meeting, that one evening, I met at least a dozen new people that I've only knew of online. And that was such a game changer because from there, I was able to collaborate. I invited guest speakers to my show. And then I was able to learn more about how to elevate my LinkedIn learning content as well, or as a speaker. And then eventually, even this year, even just a couple of months ago, I flew out to Orlando for another LinkedIn Learning Instructor unofficial reunion event where our own instructors just organized our own event to get together. And from there, I met other content creators who I've never got to meet before for the very first time and spending just 2 days together where we're like, we now want to collaborate and help each other out. So the power of going from digital to in-person is significant because one, you spend more time together, but second is the trust that's really established. And so when you think about this as someone in the workforce as well, is that, we talk about it's not just how hard you work or people get to see how hard you are in terms of as a performer, but how hard in terms of also you're developing those relationships where you have advocates, Are people advocating for you or spreading the word of how amazing you are as well?
Yes. You're building your own mini army that's willing to go to bat for you, right? And these are the people who think so strongly and so highly of you. And there are people who sat in rooms that I didn't necessarily work with, but I knew them and I had fostered a relationship with them. They're willing to say Kendal's great, even though they've never worked with me. Or vice versa. There are people that I knew in an office, and I'll give this example. One of the people who works for me now sat next to me at my last company, did not work for me. And when I moved to this company, messaged me and said, hey, I've always thought you were really great. I'd love to work for you. And hired him on the spot. It was like, that would be great, right? That relationship building, even though I didn't know his work performance necessarily, I knew him, I knew his character, I knew what he was capable of. And now he's my star performer, right?
Wow.
And so that network can be so powerful, even if you think it's not at the time, even if to you it feels like work. Those relationships blossom over time. They get stronger and you build those different avenues. And the other thing that you mentioned that I'd love to touch on as well is becoming that LinkedIn expert. And this is advice that I give to all of my executives, is if you are not an expert in something on LinkedIn, headhunters will not look for you at that level of seniority, right? Because they have their pick of the litter, so to speak. There's only so many CEO positions and only so many CEOs. And if you want to be going for that role, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you stand out? To your earlier point, how do you build that personal brand of what you're good at and what you care about? Whether that's culture and employee engagement, you're passionate about developing people and that's what you speak on, or it's in your industry. You have a lot of knowledge in financial services or in healthcare, but building that reputation on LinkedIn can help you make those relationships that you then go meet in person, that you then have intentional development with, right? It is the spark that can build those. And so I wanted to double back on that just to make sure that everyone listening gets it. Because if you are thinking that posting on LinkedIn is cringe, I'm using Gen Z terms, pretending like I know what that means. But if you are saying that posting on LinkedIn, right, nobody does that, that's not an avenue, you should absolutely be investing it. I post every job opportunity I have on LinkedIn. I talk about articles I find that are fascinating because you're building that reputation, that brand more broadly. And I'd love to hear, Diana, some of the ways that you've seen that work, that you've applied that.
Oh, I love it. We're tying LinkedIn and networking together and personal branding. I love it. This is like, so juicy here for me. So
full circle.
I just love this. So first of all, right, like it's like why is being on LinkedIn important? Let's just think about that. Or even I like to think about it. It's that most people may have what I call a skeleton profile on there where you have an account. But if you really want to essentially build your brand and build your reputation, you want to have a robust and optimized profile. And that essentially is helping you become more marketable, right? And more employable as well. And the next step then is well, how do I really be known as an expert, which is really that domain expertise of yours that you're in. And part of doing that is, one, your profile should be able to convey that messaging, which is the marketing piece there. Second is really sharing your voice and message, meaning sharing what you know in your domain field of expertise. That's going to elevate your authority, your credibility, and your marketability, and the visibility as well. Because the more you post content, you're going to be top of mind to your network. And as a result, when there are opportunities, you're part of that people are going to think like, oh, have you thought of so-and-so as well? I really believe in today's digital age, which is why I have this digital networking course as well too, is that traditionally it's been like the in-person networking, but now this digital networking using a platform like LinkedIn is really going to help you elevate in terms of opportunities you never thought of. So I'll give you an example, going back to how I've spoken for the UN 7 times in this past year, Kendal. How I got that opportunity was someone's been following me for years, recommended someone to the UN to check out my content. Okay. And then this person followed me for some time and then eventually decided to hire me as her coach to help her coach her to move back to headquarters at the UN as her interview coach. We worked together. She loved the work, right? She was like talking about me all the time. And then fast forward, essentially a year later, it was like, Diana, can you come speak for International Women's Day? And I was like, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. I want to do that. I want to give back. So it's something that I just wanted to do and to help and to give back, right? And so my client was already endorsing me. Okay, so I got a foot in the door. And from there, did my thing. Hundreds of people attended. They loved it so much that a month later, they decided to bring me back again, like 1 month later. Again, high attendance, stayed in touch with people, thanked them for, the opportunity again. That's so honored that I had this opportunity. And in the fall, like 3 months later, they're like, Diana, we want to bring you back for a 3-part career development series. And that's when we really negotiated a deal, a contract around that. And I share this, I'm really proud of, because one is obviously the reputation we talk about, right? You got to be known for something. You got to pay it forward, add value as well, do great work, right? Be willing to give back through talks as well here in this case, nurture those relationships, and then add a ton of value again. And then what was interesting is that after that happened, I did a post about it. I shared about it. I was like really happy. Someone on LinkedIn who saw the head of L&D at the UN made a comment on the post to thank me, a glowing review. Someone from UNICEF in HR saw that comment, and they used to work together. And from there, this person from UNICEF, the HR person, reached out to me to hire me for another talk. And so I talk about the power of LinkedIn is that, like that unexpected, I call it the unexpected opportunity that just by showing up, doing good work, putting good vibes out there of how things come to you as well.
Something that I feel like you are speaking to, but I also want to say really explicitly for anyone who is listening, is you should be treating your career as if it is your business, right? All of the examples Diana is giving of going out and saying, hey, I did this speech, and this is one of the great areas I've been able to be involved in, and here's my expertise on communication, soft skills, brand building. You're building a brand for yourself. And a lot of the time, I think people think of that as very separate from the corporate world. You think, oh, well, she owns a business. That's why she's doing that. She's doing that to get business. You are a business. You're doing this to get jobs. You are exchanging time for money. Diana is exchanging time for money. I am exchanging time for money. And I think a lot of the time, if you can undergo that mindset shift, to say, I am a business who is good at this skill and offers this service, and you market yourself that way on LinkedIn, you market yourself that way at events, you market yourself that way in that intentional networking, it's so impactful rather than thinking, oh, well, I just do my job every day, and in the future, I'll just do a different job. Instead, it's that proactivity in taking ownership for your own career. This is a big thing that I preach to my clients. You have to be in charge of your career because nobody else is.
You're absolutely right. I'm so glad you brought this up, Kendal, because essentially being the CEO of your own career, your own business. And I believe, having been doing this for the last 10 years now, it is even more important, more essential for individuals to know how to brand, market, and sell themselves effectively. Given this changing landscape of the workforce right now, like meaning how there's a lot of, whether it's layoffs or restructure or change that is happening, as an individual, you need to know what your unique value prop is. You need to know what you bring to the table, and you need to be able to advocate for yourself and develop great relationships, because then when people know this is what you're great at, they're going to start referring you for opportunities as well.
Yes. And I think that is a big mistake that people make when they think about networking is they think, well, I don't need to network. I'm just doing my job, or I may not need this network in the future, or I don't know how to market myself, and they hold themselves back. So what are some of those other common mistakes that you see in this industry of people making when it comes to networking, and how can people avoid them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some of the common mistakes I see people make when they're starting to network, number one is the lack of trust and rapport, meaning they really keep it transactional, right? Like just asking for help, right? Mm-hmm. Number two is after they meet people, there is that lack of follow-up. The lack of follow-up in terms of staying in touch with people. Like studies show that most people know, they understand the importance of networking, but less than 50% actually nurture the network and stay in touch with people. So that's a big missed out opportunity when you think about that. And I think number 3 is that oftentimes people may not be really clear on what is it that they want to get out of the relationship, or what is it that they really want, right? If you're really clear on what your goals are and how you can help people, it really becomes a two-way relationship there. And perhaps one thing I can really help you with is really redefine of how they think about networking. Like earlier, I mentioned how changing the mindset of thinking as positive networking and really discovering what you can do for others. And the mindset I want people to have is really thinking about being proactive, being positive, and having that possibilities networking mindset to uncover new opportunities or to learn something new in every type of interaction. One of my favorite ABC guiding principles, I always talk about networking at 3 ABCs, is always be connecting, always be curious, always be cultivating. Anytime, anywhere, as you just never know what opportunities may come your way. And one of the examples that I love telling is many years ago was how I helped actually a new grad get a job because of attending a wedding. She was the MC of the wedding, and she had just this vibrant energy, connecting with people, getting everyone to the dance floor. And I just saw something in her. This was like my friend's sister here. And I was like, she would be so great for this new grad program. And the next day, I contacted her and see if she was looking for a job, and she was. I recommended her to a new grad program. And it's really redefining networking as well, meaning part of networking is also how do you want to show up? What's the vibe and energy you want to give to people? How do you want to make others feel as well at the end of the day?
I want to add a 4th mistake to your list of 3, because I think your list of 3 is amazing. But something else that I commonly see is people going into mentorships and complaining about their boss, complaining about their job, complaining about their coworker, in an attempt to build connection, and an attempt to solicit a job opportunity, an attempt to solicit advice. And you mentioned really going in positive, right? That positive networking. And I find it so much more impactful, even if you are dealing with situations, you say, hey, you are amazing at navigating some of these situations. I find myself in a difficult position. I'd love to hear your advice on how to get out of it. And you provide context. You don't complain, but you provide context. You get that feedback. But I see a lot of conversations go south when people are unhappy in their roles and they start to complain. And at some point that erodes the relationship, right? It starts to be the primary focus rather than an exchange of information.
Yeah. And I think this is framing. I think the way you did it too here is part of it is acknowledging the person and what you value about them, and there's expertise and advice and what would you like to receive guidance on, then feeling it's like a negative kind of energy of complaining or venting there, where it may be awkward for someone, like they don't know what to say, especially if you do work with this person as well too, or in a setting where you have a professional relationship there. So I think that the framing, the positioning is really important to think about of how you want to make others feel at the end of the day there.
And that's so key, I think, in all of our communication, right? We're talking specifically, we've talked about a lot of things, but networking, brand building, building those relationships. But even if you think of your relationship with your boss, your relationship with your coworkers, your relationship with your skip level, with the person who delivers groceries on Tuesday, it is so important to go into it with that positive relationship building attitude, right? Even when you feel wronged by somebody, even when you feel that negativity, how do you approach those situations with, hey, I want to do my part. Maybe I made a miss. Maybe I misspoke. Maybe I am not being proactive enough. Maybe I'm not following up enough. How can I help nurture our relationship? And I think that approach is so key to the people that I see be really successful in corporate. And we're going to ignore the bad apples who somehow make it up there that none of us understand. But for everybody else, I think that positive attitude is such a huge reason that people find that success.
I'm going to build on this. That positive attitude is also being grateful, having a grateful attitude. And what I mean by that is just thanking people for whatever they've done, big or small, to show them, express your appreciation to them. They're going to remember that. I'll give an example. Yesterday, I recommended someone for a speaking opportunity. And I made the introduction and then they connected. And this person wrote me a beautiful note. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm forever grateful. Really appreciate it. And I was like, that's really nice. Like, I just met this person online. We just talked and I just want to facilitate introduction, but I can feel the sincerity of the appreciation. And from there, like, she expressed to me, I actually want to do more speaking. I was like, that's great. I'm going to keep you in mind and I'll refer you to other opportunities that I come across. So it could just be as simple as that of appreciation and gratitude. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be like a gift exchange or anything like that. It could just be letting them know, like, hey, thank you for that advice. Thank you for sharing that, right? Someone actually just shared with me an opportunity of being a live stream host. And they're like, I thought of you. And I was like, thank you for that. That's really kind of you.
Yeah.
Simple as that, you'll make their day. Guarantee.
And I think there's a lot of simple ways to do this in work. And I have a reputation. My leadership often makes fun of me because on every meeting, I'm like, well, and I want to thank so-and-so for providing the data, and so was able to do this. And then without so-and-so, we wouldn't have met the deadline. And my leadership always says, anybody else you want to thank before we get started? I have like a list. But I've worked for those people who don't say thank you. I've worked with those people to whom you support, but they don't give you credit. And I have such a visceral reaction to that I am grateful that people are helping. I am so excited to have good partnerships and good collaboration. And so I think, to summarize all of this, regardless of the situations that you're facing, Diana's advice is so on point. Be grateful in that situation. Have a positive attitude. Don't be afraid to say thank you. I don't know why that gets a negative rep in corporate for whatever reason. But if you are that person who brings light to those situations, you will differentiate yourself. You will be looked for. You will be that person that people want to recruit because they know you're going to bring that positive culture, energy, light into their situation, and they need that. And so your personal branding should be part of your skills, but it can also be some of those soft skills, that light, that energy that's going to allow you to differentiate yourself.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting? When I was in corporate, I was given the feedback I said thank you too much. Expressing my appreciation. I think that's my love language there. But you know what? I want to wrap this up as we were talking about this, is that if you really want to build a strong network and sustain it long term, we talked about the positive attitude, the gratitude. I want to add a few things, right, in terms of practical things that people can do to really build a sustainable long-term network. I would say number one is maintain that regular contact, right? For those people you really want to deepen relationships, like that 3 months, every quarter, to check in with them, right? Have that lunch meeting or coffee, whatever that is. Second is nurture relationships, right? Really nurturing it. And by really adding value, like really looking at, how can I help them? How can I serve them there? The third is leveraging social media, right? To amplify your brand, your credibility and visibility. That's a great way to grow your network globally there. Lastly, one of my favorite things I love doing is giving back, paying it forward, whether it's making introductions. I have what I call my Pay It Forward Fridays. Think about, okay, who are the people I can make introductions to, or who are the people I can share a course, an article to let them know, hey, I'm thinking about you. And so just by doing those things, like, you are really making those relationship deposits. And it's going to get richer and richer. And as a result, these opportunities or these amazing things, unexpected growth opportunities will come your way there.
It's amazing. So if you're listening to this episode and what Diana is saying is really resonating with you and you want to get more information, you can find her, Diana YK Chan, on LinkedIn. It will be linked in the show notes below the episode as well. But thank you so much, Diana, for such an amazing conversation. We will definitely have to have you back soon.
My pleasure, Kendal. It was so fun being on the show. And I also want to encourage the listeners to check out my LinkedIn Learning courses as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.